Thank you for joining our event series. This is the next one in the series of events that we've been holding across this year. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to present this as part of Blocktober, first time coming to Hong Kong. Previously, we've done educational series across Hong Kong, beginning in January, through May and June, as well as we had an event in Australia as part of the Australian Blockchain Week. And all those events are actually targeted at educating everyone on the importance of crypto accounting, best practices, and today I have the privilege to have Annie from Custonomy as well, and we'll also delve into the side of custody and how important it is to have effectively a full stack of equipment that any enterprise would need in this space. Once again, the main objectives are understanding the importance of accounting and best practices, understanding the fundamentals and fundamental concepts. We often find with AEM that as a solution provider, a lot of accountants come to us with a limited understanding of what they have to do and what it really means to deal with crypto assets. From there, you can only build your practices if you have that fundamental understanding. So this is where we as a solution provider discovered and realized how important it is to run those workshops again. Just to share a little bit more on this space and where we believe AEM sits compared to other platforms, there's quite a lot of retail tax solutions in the top bracket of that diagram. The enterprise accounting has been emerging over the last few years, which is great to see. The space is becoming more competitive. But there are also aspects such as payables and receivables, so using the system for day-to-day operations. And where AEM sits these days is pretty much across all those three elements. So retail tax, we find enterprise users to perhaps worry about a little bit less. What we define as enterprise accounting is actually the ability to integrate with traditional accounting platforms, which is something we've really heavily focused on, as well as connecting to the blockchain, custody solutions, and exchanges. The payables and receivables area, it's as you can see on that diagram, it's not a major field in crypto, but we believe it will actually keep growing. That's why we pay attention to it, and we actually have some plans to service that space better as we see more demand. This is a basic diagram that explains how in that case, our accounting system works. So we manage transaction data that we pull from blockchain wallets. We also manage transaction data that we import through APIs from platforms. And as mentioned, getting that out across into accounting systems is a major area of focus for us. But it all centers on a good user-friendly dashboard with a suite of tools that are as shown in that page on the left-hand side. And as we really focus here more on the panel and just broader understanding of what we do, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth. Nevertheless, if you can go to the next slide. There's a really good diagram I wanted to show that actually explains to everyone what a crypto accounting system is and what it means to be able to use it. So as a user of crypto wallets, being an enterprise, you'll find the first of the challenges being around matching exchange rate data with those transactions. And these days, there's more and more cryptos, there's more and more tokens and blockchains, and having that ability to do it instantaneously is very important. If we take an example of an enterprise platform, it becomes really significant to be able to do it fast and smoothly. Then fetching that data from exchanges and custody platforms centers on a similar thing where you still need to be able to convert that data into fiat. And once you actually have that on the dashboard that I've shown, you're able to analyze your financial position in a very basic sense. But what happens from there is it's quite interesting for anyone who's perhaps not so familiar with crypto accounting systems. Once you import it into a system such as ours, through APIs or file imports, you are then able to effectively perform all the necessary calculations and generate reports as soon as you get that data into the systems such as Xero and QuickBooks and beyond. So we obviously have heavy focus on those two platforms. We do provide CSV export functionalities as well, and accountants are able to filter through transactions, categorize them, group them, listen to their client or their boss, depending how they work with the end user being the enterprise. But if you take into context someone dealing with even hundreds of transactions, but beyond that could be hundreds of thousands, automation is key. So with what we provided AEM was primarily an SME solution, so small to mid-sized enterprises, but we've seen over the years that more and more larger clients started to come to us. And I guess the great thing is that we deal with small volume as well as large volume. And to sort of introduce those clients that deal with us, some smaller entities or individuals who would use our system, they tend to trade, whereas larger entities that have a high, like really large volume, they tend to shift their operations to places where they're better protected from the complexities of the taxation in certain jurisdictions. And what we're juggling here at AEM is being able to provide the ability to effectively stream all the transaction data into an accounting system, retain it, and it's equally important to small businesses as well as those large enterprises. This is the same for everyone. As Daniel referred to those examples, if a platform disappears, goes offline, or even if just a really long time passes, it becomes difficult to identify transactions. So what we do largely, and where a lot of our investment goes, hence why we constantly just spending, developing, and doing things, is giving the ability to categorize transactions in two different ways. Because we're an enterprise solution provider, we deal with more of the business scenarios. So with the categories, we focus on the ledger that a business may have within the standard accounting system, and from there we assign those roles and categories to those transactions. And as the volume increases, this becomes massively important. But on the tax side as well, recently we've actually made some upgrades based on the demand. And for some of those smaller users, we still tackle the tax side. And what we find, having that enterprise angle, it sort of comes from my background in finance and accounting, where I've worked with multiple businesses even before getting into crypto. It revolves around being able to go through your transaction ledger and know that everything is being categorized correctly. And if you can do this well, then you're winning. And effectively, this is where we sit in this space and helping people who are spending a few dollars a month to people who are in need of spending several hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in some cases, where they have that much data. These days, I'll sort of walk you through our journey a little bit. It's a lot less stressful for us dealing with clients because we find that challenges that people face are pretty repetitive. And again, it centers on how quickly that client realized that they need a system and automation. And that's the number one challenge. But I guess if I go into a little bit more depth, the wish that a lot of users have is they come and they say, well, if I connect my wallets, will it just do everything for me? And can I just trust the system? And this is where we get into a discussion where we, as an example, like this year we've actually done a lot of work around making sure we run a demo with our client before they subscribe. And some clients sign up just organically, they don't even choose the demo option. But those who are quite more serious about what they do, they would go through, take a run through with us through the system. We ask them a number of questions around what they do, how and why. In some cases, we do realize that they may be lacking some fundamental understanding of what's happening with the wallets. So it's a really complex issue, but I can give you examples. Like we've had clients add wrong wallets to the accounting system because the accountant wouldn't realize which wallet belongs to the client, which doesn't, or how the wallets interact. And if I go into a bit more depth, because we are familiar with those concepts, we had to educate accountants on the difference between multi-sig transactions and wallets that have, contracts with them, and where the fees go. So there are things as simple as that, where you have a complex transaction, and it kind of goes back to actually what Annie started off us on. If someone has security procedures, they may be triggering transactions through one wallet with the contracts, then, there's multiple signatories, and all of a sudden the accountant doesn't really even realize where the fees are. And he comes back to us with a question saying, hey, your system's broken because I don't see the fees. And we would say, well, it's actually not. You're just looking for the fees in the wrong place. And there's all sorts of things like that. So that whole topic of understanding what's happening, especially when the transaction becomes more complex, the challenges are how to defend ourselves against occasional blame. And pretty much in all cases it's down to that, but there are also limitations we face. So what's interesting is the API side. Taking data from the blockchain, I would say, is the easiest. Taking data from exchanges can be patchy. However, taking exchange rates from the exchanges is better because you have reliable spot trades. Whereas when you take data from the blockchain, you're finding yourself a lot of times relying on averages. And then people might be in different geographical zones, there may be different cutoffs, they're doing daily averages. So it is quite a complex issue we face with the system, having to cover different scenarios. But as I say, these days for us is a lot more steady going, although we keep investing and expanding the system. But we're finding that, it all centers on just understanding the scenario. And this is also the last challenge is, in fact, where we sometimes push back to a client and say, well, we're the system provider. You really need an accountant at this point, and you need to understand what you're doing. So it's kind of learning to say no in some cases, or just be a bit critical of a client coming to you. So it's unfortunately not as easy as just B2C sales, selling a product. B2B is a much more complex area. We just finished building a first module of our AI bot, which is still going to be a bit of work for it to go commercial. But we found that the most important thing right now, and again, it's just the practical application of AI, is filtering through those repetitive questions from users. As I said, we've been around for more than a couple of years now. Questions are repetitive. However, new scenarios come, and having delved into the bot area and trying to actually make a bot that can interact with the questions, give responses, but long-term try and train it to actually learn from those conversations is very important. So we currently quite heavily invested in that area, and we're on an exciting path where hopefully if we can deliver the thing we want, we'll find that there's going to be a lot less help desk interaction, and a bot can actually handle a conversation going back into those technical questions. And I can tell you, that's all been inspired with the recent events of things like ChatGPT releasing, using it a lot across different scenarios, even by ourselves. And we just found that we need something internally for it to help the customer journey, basically. So that's where we sit these days, trying to bring some of this to life.